Today's episode is brought to you by Positively Productive Systems, whose mission is to be the antidote to your stress and to provide compassionate productivity resources and coaching that help you heal and achieve. Be sure to check out both free and paid resources at positivelyproductive.com/resources.
I started doing something called repurposing. And for those of us in the online space, we're very familiar with, okay, you take a video and you turn it into all these little assets you can sprinkle across the internet. And while I believe that's really valid and it helps us stay in front of the right people, that's only kind of the surface of what we can do. And being a native of Nevada, and it's one of the top gold producing regions in the entire world. So seeing what they do, where they literally dig down and find the smallest specks of goodness, put them together, and then on the other side, it gets turned into all these different things. And gold mining is really about digging in to the content you already have, not having to create new or extract pieces from what you have, but looking at what you already have that we have forgotten about, and we just neglect all that goodness that is there, that if we were to take the time and say, wow, okay, I really wanted to be able to create something new. But what if you didn't have to create it from scratch? What if you could literally dig into the content you have now, mine the pieces that make sense for that thing, and offer that to the world?
You're listening to the Positively Living podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Zawrotny, founder of Positively Productive Systems and a coach certified in time and stress management, helping clients make space for what matters most in their lives. Join me each episode and we'll talk about decluttering, stress management, habits, personalized productivity, gratitude, and so much more. I understand the overwhelm of life because I'm a wife, mom to kids and cats, and a former caregiver. I'm here to help you choose what's right for you so you can do less, live more, and breathe easier. Sound good? Let's get to it. If you're a business owner who shares content of any kind, whether through a blog, podcast, video channel, or social media, this episode is for you. Keeping it real, how much content do you create, and do you feel like you must keep creating new content in order to be relevant and valuable? One of my favorite sayings is, don't reinvent the wheel. I truly believe we need to leverage the work we've already done whenever we approach a task. Repurposing content is an excellent example of that. More content, less work? Sign me up. So how do we do it? My guest today helps us understand the when, why, and how of it all. I'm delighted to welcome Yong Pratt to the Positively Living podcast. Yong is a sought-after content creation and repurposing strategist, also known as content gold miner, that has taught thousands to simplify and reimagine their content through her top 50 marketing podcast, Amplify Your Awesome, and her online courses. During our conversation, Yong shares her unique approach to repurposing content and her DIG framework, a super simple way to go deeper into the work you've done to uncover the gold, literally and figuratively. It's evident how you can save time and effort this way, which lights up my productivity coach's heart. But you can also use this technique to quickly boost your income, which is amazing. And yet, there's more to it than that. There are so many benefits, and I'm excited for you to hear them. Welcome, Yong Pratt, to the Positively Living podcast. It has been a long time coming, and I am so excited to have you with me today.
Oh my gosh, Lisa, I know. I feel like we've been talking about this for such a long time and we've been going back and forth. So to finally be here and to have this conversation with you, first of all, I'm so grateful for that. I'm grateful for the opportunity and just spending time with you. I mean, highlight of my day.
Well, I've had the distinct pleasure of being on your Amplify Your Awesome podcast. And we knew that we wanted to have a conversation here on the Positively Living podcast, but it was just a matter of finding the right time and the right content, as if that's the perfect segue. But before we really get into what we wanted to talk about today, I would love it if you would share a bit more about who you are, who you help, and what makes you light up.
Sure. So I've been in this entrepreneurial game for over 20 years now, which is crazy to think about. But I started off as a professional dancer and then decided to share that passion with my community, opening up a performing arts center mostly for kids. I did that for 17 years. Towards the end, it really wasn't lighting me up in a way that I had experienced before. So I shifted to the online space and have done lots of different things in the online space, really pivoting, trying to find that perfect place for me, which I feel I finally have landed on. It's just taken me a while on this grand adventure. And now I am the chief content gold miner and podcast host at Amplify Your Awesome. So one of my superpowers is being able to help business owners, mainly content creators and course creators, how to really dig into their content and mine it for the gold that is sitting there, because there's so much money being left on the table by content creators because we're taught to constantly create this stuff. But I love when we can go in there and say, oh my gosh, you have this. Let's offer this gift to the world in a brand new way. And then you don't have to work as hard. Those things light me up, seeing the looks on my clients' faces and when they recognize the gold in their content. That's such a profound experience.
I love that so much for so many reasons. I mean, you're talking my efficiency language, right? Using phrases like you don't have to work so hard. And you're right. I do think, especially in the online entrepreneur space, we are constantly encouraged, whether it's meant to be that way or not, but we feel it that we have to be creating new content, and always putting in that effort. And sometimes I also think that we do it because we're distracting ourselves or we're feeling unsure. We have all kinds of things going on. I bet you see a lot of that, right?
Oh, so much. Yeah, because it's easier because content creation for most of us in this space comes really naturally. It feels good, it feels joyful, but sometimes we do sacrifice things like having conversations with people and moving our business forward in a meaningful way because we're so comfortable in that content creation cycle.
So let's go into this phrase of content gold mining and tell me more about that and kind of where it came from and what it means to you and what it will mean to us as entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. So this phrase has been kind of a long time in coming. When I came into the space, I started doing something called repurposing. And for those of us in the online space, we're very familiar with, okay, you take a video and you turn it into all these little assets you can sprinkle across the internet. And while I believe that's really valid and it helps us stay in front of the right people, that's only kind of the surface of what we can do. And being a native up to Nevada, and it's one of the top gold producing regions in the entire world, I see gold mining every day. It runs through our family. My husband is employed by the gold mines. So seeing what they do, where they literally dig down and find the smallest specks of goodness, put them together, and then on the other side, it gets turned into all these different things, jewelry, bars of gold, all these different things. So what I love is that, we can dig in, and gold mining is really about digging in to the content you already have, not having to create new or extract pieces from what you have, but looking at what you already have that we have forgotten about. We're so intent on creating to stay in that cycle, and we just neglect all that goodness that is there, that if we were to take the time and say, wow, okay, I really wanted to be able to create something new. But what if you didn't have to create it from scratch? What if you could literally dig into the content you have now, mine the pieces that make sense for that thing, and offer that to the world? I mean, being able to do that, how much time could you save? How much effort, how much heartache? Because you already have it. And then realizing that you, as the content creator, have created that, and that is your body of work. It's huge. It's not just one or two pieces, hundreds and hundreds. And if you've been in this business for any length of time, thousands of pieces. And while you may have pivoted in your business, I can guarantee there's so much in your content already that if you were to go in there and discover everything you had, I think you'd be amazed at the gold that literally you are sitting on that never sees the light of day.
Okay, that's so encouraging in so many ways. I'm thinking about how much we may have had to pivot, especially having still going through at the time that we're recording this, a pandemic, having to make so many changes. And also, too, from that like multi-passionate kind of standpoint, we're always looking at new and different things. We get excited about starting new projects or maybe pivoting or adjusting what we're doing. And this idea that the work that we've already done, we can still make use of. But the way that you're describing this really sounds like it's somehow beyond repurposing. So, can you give an example of this kind of content gold mining that we might be doing?
Sure. And I work with a lot of, like I shared earlier, course creators and coaches. And so they have a lot of content. They just create a lot of things. So I'll give you an example of a blogger that I work with. She's been in the blogosphere doing this for 10, 15 years. Right. So she's doing it for a very long time. And she just kind of kept creating these things, never really thinking about that. We had a conversation and we worked together for a short time. And literally by the end of our conversation, she had no less than half a dozen new offerings in the form of books, in the form of video series, in the form of lots of different content in different ways. So yes, it does go beyond repurposing because it really is breathing new life into the content we've already created, not having to break apart the content, but really use it as it is, put it together. It's kind of like a big puzzle. When you look at the picture, you kind of see what it's going to look like. But in the meantime, you have to fit and try things different ways because what you think might fit into this piece on the puzzle doesn't really fit there, go somewhere else. So it's really a matter of having someone usually outside of yourself look at your content because we're our own worst critics. We never think that our stuff is good enough to put a price tag on, right? A lot of us are so big-hearted. We just want to serve. So the idea of having to put a price tag on something that needs to sometimes be external to our being so that we start to see the immense value in what we've created. And, it makes me so happy when I can help people do that because there's this weight, like this visible weight that I can see. And I see them thinking, oh my gosh, I had no idea how much stuff I had or how many different ways I could put this together and offer it for sale because I'm a big believer in creating content that no matter how the end user learns, whether they want to read it, whether they want to listen on an audio, whether they want to watch a video or a combination thereof, the content we have can fill all those boxes. It really is just a matter of how do we put it together and piece it all together in a meaningful way that's going to create the transformation we want for our clients.
And so it's this idea that you can take this content that already exists and make it into something new, maybe just in terms of the format, right? Like you said, it doesn't always have to be what we think in terms of repurposing, or what I think of is saying, okay, so we have this podcast content and then we're going to take a piece of it, or there'll be a pull-out quote or something like that. But it goes beyond that in terms of saying maybe what you have an ebook here, and this could be a recording or a video, or like it can transform. I think that might be the word I was thinking of as you're describing this, right?
That's a really great word. And I'll give you an example of myself. When I kind of discovered this back in 2016, I really wanted to write a book. And in my head, the idea of writing a book was very labor intensive. It required a lot of sacrifice. It required locking myself away in a cabin, away from people to get this done. That was just my mental image of what an author looked like. So when I had the crazy idea in 2016 of taking a series of 10 or 12 blog posts that I had published a year or two before that and creating a print book and an ebook from that. I hired an editor in the process and we added the intro and the outro chapters and kind of wove some more story through it. But literally the fact that I could go from blog post to published book in less than a month, that's where it gets really exciting because it doesn't require the effort we sometimes think it's going to require because we have stories running through our minds.
Exactly. Going beyond our expectations, going beyond those perhaps limiting beliefs that we have, whatever it is that we're thinking when we are stuck. And it's not always like, oh, we're stuck and we can't move, but we're just stuck in terms of moving forward in a certain way and we haven't thought about these other options. You're absolutely right. Having that fresh set of eyes, it's so similar to what I do in the productivity realm, and thinking, okay, you want to achieve something and this kind of habit or this approach or this certain technique, that's not really your style. It doesn't fit your personality, doesn't fit how you work and how you work best. So what if we tried this? It's that innovative kind of thing. And that's what you do with content.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's really just a matter of, again, having somebody outside your business come in and see the opportunity. Because what I again, one of my superpowers is seeing the opportunities in places a lot of people don't. So when I can come in and see the opportunity and say, you have this. What if you turn that into a DIY course and offer that for sale? You could do it in a week because all the content is there. And the biggest thing I love to share with my clients too is there's no one right way. We've been conditioned to believe that in order to get success, we have to follow a certain path in a certain order and check off the boxes along the way. I did that for so long. And I always wondered why nothing ever quite fit. Nothing really accelerated at the pace that I wanted it to. And I used to get so down on myself, thinking I'm not cut out to be an entrepreneur, apparently, because I did this thing, that someone else did it. They had awesome results, and mine were kind of mediocre. So the one thing I really stress to my clients is that we can dig into all these things. We can look at the possibilities. But at the end of the day, you as the business owner get to decide how you want to package those gifts to the world.
That's right. And part of what you're describing there in terms of that matching, it's exactly what I do as a coach, because so often we are outsourcing our ideas and we're letting others tell us. And frequently it's well-intentioned that they want to say, oh, this worked for me, it can work for you. But that's not always the case. So having someone like you who's coaching you and helping you see what the possibilities are, and then you making the choice. And, you and I talked about this on your podcast because that theme of the episodes that you were doing that I was involved in was all about authenticity. And so it's so important that we figure out what feels good for us, what feels right. How do we want to show up and then move forward and display our content in that way? And it sounds like this approach that you take, it doesn't matter what the content is. This can be blog, video, podcast, you name it, anything. And you can take it and help morph it into something new and golden, basically, right?
Correct. And actually, I'm in the process. I'm actually going to be releasing some content gold mining maps, which are literally mind maps showing you, okay, if you're starting with text, here are all the possibilities that you can turn that into. If you're starting with video, look at all these new ways to create content from that thing. And if you're doing audio like this podcast, how many different ways can you package that up and share that with the world in a way that's going to make sense for them? Because, on a podcast, if someone's listening every week, that's cool. But sometimes you do series that kind of get buried in the feed. You did them a while ago, but yet they're so relevant and they're so meaningful to what the work that you're doing right now. And it's just like the core message, the core beliefs of your business that we all sprinkle in every once in a while. But what if you just put those core beliefs together and you had a package of audios and maybe maybe you created a PDF to go with that? There's so many ways to slice and dice it. And it goes far beyond being omnipresent, right? Because the idea of being everywhere, because you can repurpose everything to be everywhere. When I first got into this space, that's what I did, and that's what I help people do. But what I discovered is that at the end, when you do it from that perspective, you're getting so much content, you just don't know what to do with it. I mean, it's just you're creating it just to create it, and it's there, and you can use it. But if we dive in from the other direction and say, I wonder what would happen if I pulled out these 5 things or 6 things and put it together with something I did a year ago or 2 years ago, because I was talking about the same thing. You can demonstrate to your audience that, I've been talking about this for a long time. The verbiage may have changed, but the end result that I want for you is still there. So what about if I just put this in a new program for you and you were able to go through at your own pace? How awesome would that be?
And I love that idea as an entrepreneur, because frequently we will say something that we truly believe was so important and our audience, felt the same way. But then time goes on and it feels like forever ago since we said it. And I've been in that trap where I'm like, how old is too old? Okay, case in point, I have a core values worksheet in my free resources library. And it was one of the first things I created early on in my business. And even though it's been around for a while, it still holds true. It still works. I still bring it out. Everyone that I work with, all of my clients use it. And I just used it in a free sprint that I'm running with a fellow productivity coach, and it still applies. And I think we have to get out of that that mindset that just because something isn't current, because I know when we're online and everything's constantly new, I think we can feel as though things that we shared a while back like aren't as valuable, but you're saying they truly are.
Absolutely. I 100% believe that right now. I mean, if every listener were to sit down for an hour today and really list out all the places where they have content, like list out all their content, what will naturally happen is that there's going to be buckets of content that are similar. And you may not even have realized when you were in that creation cycle that you did that. But if you have everything in a Google Doc, in a Google spreadsheet, and you have the links, because we're all really good at putting stuff in lots of different places, I find that a lot of entrepreneurs don't have a centralized place to store all of their awesomeness. So what if you just took an hour and you did that, or you had your VA go through and find everything listed out, and then you have those buckets. Guaranteed those buckets are still things you're talking about today. Otherwise, you would not have done them. There is something inherent in you all that time ago that is now relevant. And you may want to give it a refresh. You may want to change the colors. You may want to give it a new cover, whatever it is. That's okay. That's 5 or 10 minutes worth of work. It's not like I'm asking you to spend the day creating a brand new anything.
It's a new coat of paint.
Yeah, exactly. Let's do it in, yeah. And a new coat of paint can go so far in helping us feel like it is brand new. Like that's sometimes all it takes. And that's really what I'm advocating. You don't have to do new all the time. Yeah, taking something out, putting that fresh coat of paint on, offering it out into the world in a way that's going to make sense, in a way that's going to support people. That's really where the magic happens.
You just inspired me to think of an instance where I did something like this and to keep in mind that it's not, okay, we've taken something, we've repurposed it, refreshed it, and it's one and done. It can be constant iterations of this kind of mining, right? So I have been a fan of, a proponent of, a teacher of gratitude for years now. And I think we're coming up on 4 years in the fall that I have done a free gratitude group that is like an open year round, but it's a pop up every quarter. And I go in and teach, and we kind of have it's a combination of like group coaching and daily prompts and stuff like that to bump up the gratitude again, to revisit it, to bring it back, to make it top of mind. All that to say, prior to creating this group, I was posting about gratitude, talking about gratitude on interviews, talking about gratitude. There were so many places where I was sharing my thoughts, my perspectives, how to see it a little differently, where I was challenged with it, all of these things. And when I started to pull those together, I had content to create this group to do 4 weeks of coaching, which now is content for what I am planning on is a book. But you know what I mean? It keeps feeding into it if I only take a moment to go back and look at what I've created already with that. I don't have to start fresh when it comes to that.
And that's such a good example. And what you just said about taking that moment, and that's usually all it takes, that moment or two, or what if you just gave yourself half a day to look and dig into all the stuff? And like Lisa, you're able to say, oh, okay, yeah, I had forgotten I did this interview. But look, it's all about the same topic. How can I now offer that in a way that is going to serve more people? And so the fact that you did that on your own in a way that is now going to be the next thing, the book. That's so cool to be able to say it started with an idea and a belief you had in gratitude all that time ago, whether it was years ago, months ago, but there's that common thread. And all of us listening, everyone listening will have that. If you were to just take that moment, you're going to find those common threads, those common buckets. And I can't wait to see what you do with that when you take that moment to recognize your gifts, to recognize what you have created, you recognize what is possible for someone else with what you have brought to life, usually out of nothing, right? It's already part of our being. So let's just really tap into that place where the potential is endless.
You're discovering what's already there. And this is the perfect segue to taking us through the steps, which you really already started. You talked about taking, even if what we can do today, right, is take 1 hour or, within the next few days or whatever, take 1 hour, let's say, and start looking at all the places we have content, right? And kind of exploring and even just making notes of it. Cause I'm thinking of an example. One of the things I had forgotten for a while, but I finally started to pull together is all of the other interviews I've been on. Like I'm totally going back and re-listening to our episode together on your podcast, right? To remember what it is that I shared. So we look for where we have the content, we pull that together. And then I love what you said about looking for the categories and the threads, because that's a very organized mind kind of approach. And I love that. But really, we start to connect topics. We start to see maybe one that comes up as more prevalent. Then what do we do from there?
I'm going to take a step back and talk about my DIG framework, the DIG framework.
Great.
The D is to discover. It really is that time where you discover everything you've already created and you put it in a central location, because then those common threads come up. The next part is the I. You're going to ideate. You already have these buckets that are naturally going to rise to the top. How can you then put those things together and offer them to the world? And that goes right into G, going for the gold. Because for me, there's so much untapped potential, income-wise and impact-wise, in what we have. If we can ideate and think, okay, I have a series of blog posts, I have a series of interviews I've been on. How can I put a pretty bow on that and offer that within a day, within a week? I mean, I can guarantee that everyone listening, if you were to spend the time this week, spending a couple hours going through this process of digging through your content to discover, ideate, and then go for the gold, whether you sell it for $1 or $7, maybe you want to test out something you want to do in the future. Or what if you just offer it and say, okay, it's $7 this round. I don't know what's going to happen. But if people really are interested in that, that's a better way to test out the next program, product, or service, rather than sitting down, creating a thing and hoping and praying that someone's going to buy it. Right? You already have it. Why don't you just take that and offer that and see if that could potentially be a lead in to that next great thing?
And that is such a great low risk way to do the market research that you need to. And sometimes, and if it is like a low risk investment, then, micro commitment of some kind, then now you have a paid lead, which is great too. I mean, it all feeds into the next thing that you need to keep growing and to get your audience what they want.
Absolutely. And when you sit down and do this, what you discover today is going to be different than tomorrow because you have different experiences you've been through. So you want to practice this routine, I'd say, once a quarter at least, where you go through and say, oh, well, I offered it like this. Well, what if now I have this content? What if I now put that with that? And now it's more robust. It really is just taking those puzzle pieces, putting them in those new directions and new ways to see and to test and to get people knowing you more, liking you more, trusting you more, and it's going to lead them to that next place that you want to take them.
And this also sounds like it not only an important practice in general for our efficiency and our productivity, but also when we have moments in our business where we need an income boost, we're looking to, I don't know. I mean, whether it's to compensate for an adjustment in terms of clients or some kind of income shift, or whether we want to create an injection so that we can pay for some project or some kind of help, something coming up, right? This seems like the best place to go when we want to come up with a new product, a new service, a new something, whatever it is, a new offering, I guess is the phrase that I'm looking for. This is the perfect approach because we've already done the majority of the work.
Yes, absolutely. And I will say I've used this myself to fund things like braces for my kids or going on a weekend vacation because you know what the dollar amount is. And then you kind of reverse engineer that. Okay, I want to provide X amount of value. How do I do that from what I already have? It's a very backwards way of approaching content because most of us don't learn about this portion of it. We do this thing and you check the boxes and you move on. And we're not celebrating along the way. So this is really a big way to celebrate all of your awesomeness and to be able to get those cash infusions when you need them, or maybe you just make them part of your business and you offer something every quarter. I mean, how cool would that be if you didn't really have to work on much new content, but rather you focus on what you already have to gain that traction so that you have the funds to build that next thing or to bring on a new staff member.
I love that you use the word celebrate too, because that was in my notes. I wanted to talk about that a bit in that when we do this, not only is it just, it's so practical in terms of, repurposing, reusing, and keeping the workload down for us, but it's a way to remember that we've created some amazing stuff. And not only do we get to celebrate that, which is so important and fun because we have to bring the fun in, right? But also, I mean, at least for me, I found that it helps me get even more clear on my stance and my content and lock in certain phrases or remember certain, like, oh, that was a good phrasing. Why am I not saying that? That makes so much sense, and kind of bringing that back and really helping me become clear on that content as well. I feel like I become better at expressing that content when I revisit what it is that I've written and expressed before about it.
So true. And I literally just did an episode on my podcast about this because I was been reminded on Facebook about something I created last year, a summit that I did. And it was awesome. I pulled together a summit in just a matter of weeks during the very beginning of COVID because I just kept seeing all these businesses close their doors. And I wanted to show people there are other ways, even if you are facing these challenges like we all are. Here are some creative ways that you can do in your business. Keep your doors open, right? And so I was tempted just to let it go away. And then I kept just getting this niggling feeling like, you really need to acknowledge this somehow. And for me, the podcast was a perfect place to talk about it because what I got back, the response I got back from that particular episode was, oh my gosh, yes. Why do we forget that? Why do we forget to have fun along the way? Why do we forget all the cool stuff we did before and just strive for that next thing? So the celebrating part and digging into your content is really a massive celebration. You can get a bottle of wine, a bottle of bubbly, sit outside and enjoy some sun, and then just relish in what you've created. When I grew up, I never was encouraged to celebrate because it was kind of boastful, kind of bragging. But I would imagine a lot of listeners had that same experience where, you don't talk about your accomplishments because that's just not how you do. That's just not how you are. You just don't brag about things. And then when I got older, and especially recently, I think, gosh, for my kids, I love to celebrate their wins. Why do I not do that for myself? And I think as moms, as business owners, we're so focused on lifting up those around us. We forget to lift ourselves up in this process. So if you can just take that moment, celebrate all those wins, and then offer whatever it is you discover in the process out to the world from that mindset, from that energy, that's going to change everything.
Yeah. And be sure when you sit down, whether it's with wine or coffee or just in a quiet room where you have locked everyone out and you do this, even if for the first round is to simply go through it and to celebrate, be sure to message me. Let me know, message us and let us know. We would love some feedback on what it is that you discovered during this whole process because you've done incredible things. It is time to celebrate and then be able to leverage what you've discovered into something brand new, time saved, money earned, all good things.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I can't wait to hear all about this too, because that would be my challenge for everyone listening. That, yeah, as soon as you do this, message Lisa, message myself, let us know. We want to celebrate with you because if we're bad at celebrating ourselves, we sometimes need that person in our corner who's going to celebrate with us, even on our behalf. And I'm more than happy to celebrate you. So please allow us to do that for you.
Yes. I mean, this is what we do together. And now let's just add to the mix, right? Yeah. I would love to hear what happens. All right. Any other words of wisdom you want to share on this topic that I might not have asked?
I would just say for everyone listening, I want you just to remember how incredibly awesome you are. From everything you do every day in your business to keep it running, to the people that you impact, to the content you create, it all needs to see the light of day. And the more you can tap into that goodness that you already created, that is the essence of who you are and who you want to be and who you want to serve, that's going to be the day when things really click into place and change because you realize just how powerful and how brave you actually are.
Beautiful. Yes. Living your purpose is one of the most incredible things. Okay. Are you ready for the rapid wrap up? Please Fill in the blank for me. The song that always makes me dance is?
This Is Me from The Greatest Showman.
Love that soundtrack. Absolutely. Okay. Well, that song gets to go on my Spotify Positively Living Podcast Dance Playlist, Volume 2. You can hear it on there. Now, the quote or mantra I share all the time is?
So this is by Dr. Seuss, and he's so profound in so many ways, but my favorite that he says is, "You are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, smarter than you think, and twice as beautiful as you imagined."
I love it. Okay, the resource, book, or app, any of those, that makes my life easier is?
So I would say the Otter app on my phone has become my new best friend. I use it to record everything. If I'm out for a walk and I have a random thought, I will pull out the voice memos app and it will transcribe it for me. So when I go back, I can listen and I can see it in a written form. And it's just a great way to remind me to do things and also just to help me create on the go.
There you go. And that segues beautifully into, the how of once we find things that we've created, especially from the audio side, how we can then move it into, the different kinds of modalities, if you will, or the different kinds of platforms. And you're right, that app is excellent. That's helped me a great deal. I'll tell you another way that I have used it is when I've had to create something that I want to script out, but it was easier for me to externally process. So I said it first, transcribed it, and then worked with that script to kind of fine tune it and see what I was missing. I know it sounds funny, but I know that's how I work best. And it was really helpful to do it that way.
Yeah, and I find too, when we type things out, we self-edit along the way. Whereas when you put it into existence, it's not really possible to self-edit. It's free flow, and it's usually the best stuff. And then if you use that to be the basis of your blog or your book or anything you want to create, yeah, that's so much more effective. It saves time, it saves energy, and it saves a heartache of us beating ourselves up as we're typing out.
So true. Keeps it all authentic. Okay. And last, but definitely not least, what or whom are you grateful for today, Yong?
As I'm sitting here recording, I can see out my window, and I'm so grateful that my mom now lives out here on our property. She just built herself a greenhouse. So I get to literally look out every day and be grateful that my kids have access to her. I get to see her each and every day. And that just makes every day so much better.
That's beautiful. Well, I am so grateful for you. And I know that listeners will want to find you online and to play and to celebrate with you and to do all the things just like I have. Where can we find you?
2 places. Probably the best place to find me is going to be my website, and that's just yongpratt.com. If you want to come share what you've created from your discovery sessions after listening to this podcast, come post that in my Facebook group, The Arena of Awesome. I'm there to cheer you on. There are other content gold miners in there, always ready to lift you up and celebrate right alongside you.
Great. Okay. I will make sure to have all those links in the show notes. And I want to thank you, Yong, for shining your light in this world so bright and for sharing it with us today.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. It's been my pleasure, my joy. I'm so grateful you invited me to have this conversation. And I can't wait to discover what everyone has found once they've dug into their content goldmine.
Thank you for joining me today. Your time is precious and limited, and I'm honored you chose to spend it with me. If you have feedback, questions, or want to schedule a chat, head to positivelyproductive.com/connect. And if you are looking for any of the resources referenced on the podcast, from books to products to training and more, go to positivelyproductive.com/resources.